we've come to a stage whereby 777 partners are, that they are, it's almost burning to the ground the empire that they built, and the exposure that ACAP had to 777 means that they're trying to sell their assets and reduce exposure in other areas that they have with them. So, they've already instructed banks to sell football clubs, but the loan that they provided to Everton, or the funding they provided to 777 to provide to Everton, is the cause of some concern for the Friedkin group, largely because there was a civil case, so not a criminal case, civil case brought against 777 and ACAP in a New York court in May, where there were allegations made of fraudulent activity in order to secure $600 million worth of funding. Now, it's important to say that both ACAP and 777 reject those claims. It's still ongoing litigation, but it's worrisome for someone like the Friedkin group, because allegations of fraud are something to be taken extremely seriously, and they can have ramifications further on down the line. So basically, it's Leadenhall Capital Partners, I think, was the firm which has taken this civil action against 777 and ACAP, and they claim that they'd kind of double pledged on some of the assets that they owned to get as collateral for loans, which you're not allowed to do, and then they'd also put up other assets which they didn't own as collateral for loans. So that that's their claim for fraudulent activity there. What that means is that there is a risk, could be further on down the line, if this does go to a criminal court by the DOJ, Department of Justice in the US, that could mean that there would be a potential for a Proceeds of Crime Act further on down the line. And that is something which it would be a thread that would run to the Friedkin group if they acquired the club and then paid off the loan, etc. So
even
that's
if
what's
they paid off the loan,
yeah. So
just
it's
outright.
yeah, because I mean the club would have benefited from the Proceeds of Crime Act. Now there was some talk about indemnity insurance that the Friedkin group were looking at to try and protect themselves from that, but that would require some element of Mashiri give on that respect, which I don't think he was minded to do. And it's also very, very hard to get insurance against a kind of open-ended Proceeds of Crime Act further on down the line. So I think that it was just deemed as too much risk. They don't want to be tied up. They don't want to be linked. They don't want to have any exposure to 777 debt or ACAP debt. And also, it's extremely expensive because the interest rate is very, very high on the loans that 777 and I'm going to say 777 now because I'm sick of saying 777 partners. It's a very, very high interest bearing loan on what they provided to Everton. If you looked at someone like MSP or even the Friedkin group, who paid off the MSP loan when they first came on board through these talks, that was £158 million. That's kind of an interest rate of 5% or so. You're looking well into double digits for the interest rate of the 777 ACAP loan, and it's a lot to pay off. And I don't think there is the desire for the Friedkins to get involved in something which has open-ended litigation.
Who would then, if it was to go to Proceeds of Crime Act, is there a barrier or a sense of, because that's in the US or this is the UK, are the laws different, or do you know what I mean? Would that still impact Everton as well?
Yeah, I mean it's because the Friedkins are a US-based company.
Yeah,
that's where all their business interests are, and for them to be, it is the fact that they are already being asked to pay a sum for the football club, take on a large amount of debt, but then it's this. There's good debt and bad debt. You look at Spurs, £800 million worth of debt, but it's good debt. Interest rates fairly low, stable. And it's for an infrastructure project. This is money where they don't know the source of the money, and if it's been acquired fraudulently, if that is proven to be the case, which I stress again they deny, that is problematic for the Friedkin group, because then you are a link through that. So it could be impactful further on down the line, and I don't think there's you're looking what they don't think the risk and the reward is there for them to pay off this loan and at a very, very high interest rate for an open-ended litigation ongoing. I don't think the appetite's there for them to do that, as well as have to clean up and everything else that comes with the football club. It becomes a very, very expensive process, and one which offers some element of reputational risk, because they're they would be linked with the debt which has been accrued by 777 and ACAP.
If it got to that stage, then who would bring the prosecution to? I don't know, ACAP, 777.
Well, it's at the moment it's only a civil case. So
but if it got to that stage, is it the American?
It would be. So the US DOJ
attorneys
would. They would have to. They could bring criminal charges against 777 and ACAP for if they deem it to be fraudulent activity, and that is when it would become really problematic. I mean, it's still not been resolved. There was supposed to be a hearing back end of last week around this Leadenhall case. No resolution was reached, and it continues to rumble on. Even if it's settled, I mean, the DOJ could still bring criminal charges, but it's at the moment ACAP are just wanting to try and reduce exposure to 777 debt. So there'll be, a high interest bearing loan is doing well for ACAP on their own balance sheet at the moment. So they wouldn't be able to, they wouldn't be looking to take a haircut on that, because they need to raise funds as and where they can.
Well, sorry, go on. We'll come on to that. We'll come on to that. But tell me if I'm wrong. So my understanding of the Leadenhall case, which I don't really know anything about, to be honest. I know little bits. It's obviously from what I've read, on reports. It's allegations of double pledging assets.
Yep.
So is there a suggestion that's what 777 have done with this £200 million loan to Everton in some way?
Well, like 777 have done across their entire investment portfolio, it's been spending other people's money, and that's what investment firms do, really. But their main tap of finance came from ACAP. Now, this isn't the first instance of 777 being involved in something like this. So there was an issue with non-payment of loans that they had from a company called Obra Capital, which they were involved with, which they tried to lend money off. Again, allegations of collateral which they were putting up, which either wasn't theirs to put up, or they'd already had a kind of a mortgage on, I suppose. So that's the issue here. So they've been double pledging on businesses to raise this money, and you can't do that. So they've already got loans which have used security on other businesses, and they're doing that. That's the allegation anyway. So it's a real messy web, and one which it still means that even though the 777 deal collapsed in May, and in reality it collapsed long before that. I think the writing was on the wall for several weeks before that. You only have to look at what's recently happened with. They're selling all their football assets, their investment in the British basketball leagues and the toilet. Nearly all of the British basketball league staff were made redundant recently because of the collapse of all that. So there's real life, consequences to all this, and to their behaviour. So they were never viable purchases for the football club. What they did is they provided Farhad Moshiri with the ability to fund the stadium and working capital to keep the lights on, I suppose, during the past 8-9 months without him having to spend his own money. Problem is, now they've kind of got into bed with the devil, I suppose. It's you are linked, and it's going to be it's not going to be any different for the next people that come in and look at the football club. So it will be. It's as I said, the Friedkin Group's representative stressed it was a investable football club with a new stadium is kind of a real carrot, especially for US investors. New stadium is something that in the US is core to revenue generation, is how to monetize the stadium and the live event. But the problem is going to be this loan. The lawyers of the next potential people that come in and purchase a club will tell them the same thing. This could be problematic further on down the line, and it's up to whether it's the appetite for risk. Now, it's not to say that no one will come in and be willing to pay off the 200 million plus with high interest loan and be willing to take that risk of a poker further on down the line. But the problem is that really genuine, legitimate people will see this as risk. So hence the reason why Dan Friedkin and the Friedkin group have looked at it and thought that's probably more than we're willing to do for us. And then you start to, the risk. You're looking for someone who's willing to a willing risk taker who may be willing to take that on board. But again, it's the pool becomes shallower and shallower when you factor this in, and it's sad really, because it's the club are now bound to this investment company, which has been proven to be unfit to manage sporting assets, but they're still bound to it. And it's probably Mashiri's made plenty of mistakes at Everton, and this one's probably his biggest.